G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to another preseason team preview. This is one of the ones I have been looking forward to the most. We are going to talk about the Fremantle Dockers, and if you want two blokes to have a discussion about this team, it is certainly the two blokes that I have here today. So directly under me, he is a familiar face, been on here a couple of times already during the pre-season, reviewing Sydney as well as the Giants. It is my man, Dan Mashman, a.k.a. FreoTragic. How you been going, buddy? How is that team looking at the moment?
Yeah, good to be back. Yeah, it's changed a bit with all the preseason games. I always say I'm not going to change my team, and then, Butters rolls an ankle and LDU scores rubbish, and I don't know. It's changed a little bit. Those two will probably explode at the start of the year. Like, no one picked English last year because he'd done hamstrings and everything in the season, and he ends up like joint top scorer or second top scorer in the whole game. So, yeah, we should probably just be a bit more like Damo below and be stoic with our sides, but it's hard.
It could be some good advice, mate. It could be some good advice. Now, the man below me, below Dan, is a great man. I tell you what, a big reason for my channel reaching 5,000 plus subscribers. It is the great man Damo from the Footy Mailbag. And this year, even more exciting, he's got his own YouTube channel. You can see the logo there, Damo SuperCoach. So, Damo, thank you very much for joining us, mate. Super excited to have you on. How you been, buddy?
It's great to be here, man. Launched the Footy Mailbag after, Jock Reynolds shut down. Launched that with Clarky, and also going to be running my SuperCoach YouTube channel, sort of like a video diary of my season, like letting people know my trades and my thoughts throughout the season. But most of the content for this preseason is over at the Footy Mailbag, and we're slowly getting everyone across from the Jock Reynolds fan base. But it's been fun. It's been fun.
Awesome, mate. And I've been loving your work with Clarky there on the Footy Mailbag in particular. And if there's anyone that hasn't checked it out yet, make sure that you do yourself a favor, because I tune into every episode. Well worth the watch. So make sure you head over, give Damo a subscription, because it's well worth it. One of my favorite people in the community. But boys, we are here to talk the Fremantle Dockers. I know you are both very, very passionate supporters. Dan obviously up in Sydney, so can't get to regular games. But Damo, I know that you are in and amongst it over there in WA, so cannot wait to get into this. And we might as well start off in defence with Lukey Ryan, 28 years of age, 23 games last year, almost averaged 110.5 more, and he would have got there. I think he deserved it. Phenomenal season from him. Averaged 24 touches, just a 5 contested, but 8+ marks, which is always good for SuperCoach points, particularly down back. 119 kick-ins in total. 2.9% of the competition currently own this man. Damo, what do you think about the Luke Ryan selection? Has he been in your team at any stage during the preseason, or do you think there are possibly better options at the price, mate?
I'm a big Luke Ryan fan, and I think he's a great SuperCoach selection. But the one question mark that I've had all preseason, and we kind of got answers in the preseason game against Port Adelaide about how he's going to be used, but with Hayden Young moving out of there and a bit of a personnel shuffle with that back six, how was that going to look with him, and what was going to happen to his role? And the answer is not a lot, but he does seem to be using the ball and moving up the ground a bit more than he was in the past. So he's got opportunities more to get amongst it now. And I don't know if that's good for his scoring or bad for his scoring, but I just think at 600K, you have to be sure of the player that you're picking. And as much as I love him, there's too much changed in that back line now with Hayden Young out there and the shuffling of players around him, that I think you can pick him if you're confident, but if you're not, then 600K is too much to invest otherwise.
Good point, mate, with the game style, because I think last year in particular, that game style was probably positive for Ryan's scoring. We can see there, he's got a big ceiling, averaged 100+ in the last 5 seasons. Dan, any love for Luke Ryan as a SuperCoach selection, mate?
Yeah, hard to pick him he's sort of top priced for me. I can see him maybe getting to, going at like 110 again, but you're paying for what you get there. And I think if you're going to pay for what you get over 600K, they kind of need to be a captain option. And I'm not sure that Lukey Ryan really is. Maybe a VC occasionally, but he's not. You know, you want to be able to. You want to like a Goulden or a Tom Green or someone that you can put a VC on and hope for a 140, 150. And Lukey's not going to do that too often. I think he's got a pretty high floor, and he obviously, they love the ball in his hands, and he's still going to be very consistent. But I'm not sure he's a great starting selection.
Very good. So probably an upgrade selection at some stage during the season. If he gets to maybe that, say, 550 mark, super player, maybe not as a starting pick, though. The next man, though, Hayden Young, if you look at his ownership, 33.2%. That may have risen over the weekend. I know in that first practice match, people were a little bit concerned, didn't think he performed super well, but I think during the last game, got a lot of those people back on side again. 22 years of age, 22 games last year for an average of 94, a tick over 22 disposals, 6.1 contested, a CBA rate of 16%. So that was more towards the end of the year. And it's all about this new role coming into 2024. He will be a midfielder only. Well, is that the case? I may be wrong there, but that's what the talk coming out of Fremantle's been. FreoTragic, what do you think, mate? Are you pretty much locking and loading Hayden Young, or do you think there may be some red flags to this selection, mate?
Yeah, I'm locking him in for sure. I can only see upside. Like, the absolute worst case, he does what he did last year and goes back to the back line, and you have to trade him at some stage. But I can only, really see upside. I think people are getting a bit carried away thinking he's going to be like 105 plus. I think if he goes, a touch over 100, that's pretty much a win. He might get to 105, but he'd probably have to get a heap of tackles. He's still going to play, he'll be leaning on the Oppo's best mid at stoppage. He'll play a bit of a defensive role around stoppage. But as soon as we get the ball, he's going to be trying to get to the outside and use that lethal left peg. And hopefully he'll get forward like he did in the Port game and kick a few goals as well, because he can launch them from outside 50, and goals are good points in SuperCoach. What do you reckon, Damo?
Gee, it was a big swing from the practice game against West Coast to then how he performed against Port Adelaide. And I think what happened against West Coast was, with Jeremy Sharp being a late out due to illness, a lot of players weren't playing their true role in that game because they kind of had to chop and change to cover all of that. But he was probably the most dominant midfielder against Port Adelaide, and his size and athleticism was really on show. And there was almost like there was two Nat Fyfes out there, one at the end of his career and one only just beginning in Hayden Young, just by the way that they were using the ball and bustling through the tackles and hitting the scoreboard. So locked into my team. He had 5 shots on goal, only converted 2 of them, but if he's going to have that impact forward of centre and at the stoppage and in the centre, then there's no reason why he can't average triple figures. How high he goes above that 100 mark, who knows? But he's certainly got the role, certainly got the talent, certainly got the skills to shoot for the moon.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And 115 points in that last practice match, and only went at 69% efficiency. And I think he can do a lot better than that because such a magnificent user of the ball. So I think we're all in agreement there. Hayden Young, super pick in our backlines, and obviously going to be gained DPP as well. Yeah. The next man is Jordan Clark. So much more of a pod, only 1.2%, 23 years of age, 23 games last year, averaged just over 80, just under 20 disposals for an average year as well. 23 kick-ins is a slight bonus. I've got the notes here, talented player, but can he improve his output to reach, let's just say, a triple figure average? Damo, are you a fan of Jordan Clark as some sort of a pod SuperCoach selection, or one that you're just skipping past for now, mate?
In Classic, no. In Draft, I think he's a very solid selection in Draft. You could actually probably make him one of your first defense selections if you're just playing Draft. But for Classic, there's a bit more I need to be convinced about, and I just don't think he's a good starting selection. He might be someone that we look at as an upgrade target. We might see him as the main beneficiary of Hayden Young moving into the midfield. But until we can see it, who knows? He does have a history of a very good floor, though, so he might be someone that is a cut price option late in the season that people select to finish their defenses if they are struggling for a bit of cash.
Yeah.
Very good, mate. Possibly a bit of a smoky. Dan, what are your thoughts on Jordan Clark, mate?
Yeah, he's in my fantasy side. I think you've got a bit more flexibility over there to pick someone like Jordan Clark. He also doesn't have a whole lot of kind of contested stuff in his game, tackles and stuff, a little bit, but he's more that outside sort of marks and kicks. And so I think his game does suit fantasy a little bit more than, but yeah, he could surprise. I mean, he's obviously quite a high-end talent, and he's only 23. He's hitting those sort of right amount of games now and stuff that he could really step up. They're talking about him being a bit more of a leader down back, and I think it's interesting that we were sort of talking pre-recording until we sort of know what's happening with Aish down there as well, and how those guys kind of work together, and what's happening with Ryan, and watching the whole thing work. It's going to be hard to pick any of them really, but there's definitely upside there in draft. I'd pushed him up to more like a 90 in draft because I want him in my side as well. So, but yeah, I think he could go 95, which kind of not really enough, but at that price it is.
I like it. So maybe a sneaky draft selection is Jordan Clark. Now, the next man, very unfortunate because I know that he was a pretty popular selection, particularly in the preseason. It's Heath Chapman, 21 years of age, 3 games last year. I won't go through all the stats. A super talented player, but unfortunately a moderate grade hamstring strain. His return to action, I think, is to be announced. Damo, have you heard any news on the return date for Heath Chapman, mate?
Looks like they want him to return rounds 2 or 3, all things going to plan. I know that he started running with the main group just this week, so he's recovering a little bit quicker than they had previously thought, but I don't think they're going to rush him just because of his history with soft tissue injuries. I know he's been all the way to Europe and Dubai and all that to try and get his soft tissue injuries with all these high-end doctors trying to help him, but I don't think this hamstring is. I think this hamstring might be an outlier from what he's had in the past, and it's nothing. And it's not a tear; it's just a strain, which is probably a good thing in Heath Chapman's case.
Yeah,
beautiful, mate. Thank you very much for the update. We won't spend a heap of time on Heath because obviously we can't select him in our starting sides, but maybe once he comes back, couple of weeks starter, maybe some sort of a downgrade option for us if we need him. Into the midfield, boys, and this man has featured in my side for much of the preseason. It's Caleb Serong, real breakout season last year. Pre-buy 114, post-buy 108, but last 5 up to 113. So pretty consistent season from him. 111.2, 30.7 disposals for an average. Super impressive year from him. I really didn't see this coming. I thought we could have a mini breakout, but not to this extent. Big fan of this bloke. But boys, tell me, is he an absolute lock for a 110 plus average again?
Been locked into my side since the team picker opened. I don't care that Hayden Young's going to come into their midfield. I don't think he's going to dilute Caleb Serong's minutes or scoring opportunities. I think another player, which we'll probably talk about a bit later, is probably going to be the one that suffers from the addition of Hayden Young and a fit Nat Fyfe. But Caleb Serong, I say his lack of diversity probably helps him, and that doesn't sound like he's that good of a selection, but I think it helps him in this case because he's a midfielder out and out, and there's not a lot of other places that you can put him. Maybe ahead of the ball, he might spend some games if he gets tagged, which I don't think the tag will come to him, but yeah, locked into my side from the very beginning because I think he's going to go on another level, and I think only having these bigger guys around him will give him a clearer path to improve his scoring.
Sounds very exciting, mate. Tick, tick, tick. Dan, what do you think about Caleb Serong, mate? Is he currently in your side?
Not currently. He has spent a lot of time in there, and he could make his way back. I love him as a selection. Obviously, one of my favourite players going around, and his disposal, like you've put there, it can let him down a little bit, but that's not rare for young inside mids. So that, if anything, is an area that he could improve on as he gets better at sort of getting out of stoppage and finding a bit more time and using the ball a bit better. So there's opportunity there. I think his sort of max upside maybe as a 23, 24-year-old is probably about 115 maybe he could get to. I couldn't see him getting much above that. But and I don't really see regression either. I'm with Damo on that. I think that's his spot. He's in there. And yeah, anywhere from sort of 110 to 115, which makes him a pretty solid selection.
Beautiful. Well, yeah, in the last match against the Power, 95 for a SuperCoach score, 29 touches at only 65% efficiency. So if he can clean that up, absolutely will reach triple figures, 13 of those contested as well. So I'm in agreement with you boys. I don't think he is going to be the one to suffer. Will it be this man, though? Andy Brayshaw at a very similar price. You are saving a little bit of coin here on Andy, a superstar of the competition, already been the MVP. So we know that the players vote on that. Very, very high esteem. He's held in with the rest of the competition and his peers in particular. 109 for a 2023 season average, 29.2 disposals on average. Now, that CBA rate, I think this is going to be a really interesting talking point. 79% last year. What do we think this year? This is what it's all about with Andy B. Damo, do you think that that CBA rate of 79% will A, increase, B, stay around the same, or C, suffer as a result of the Fyfes of the world maybe taking a little bit more time in there? What's your take on Andy B, mate?
Can I pick answer D? Depends on the opposition.
Okay,
I think his running capacity is no secret, and we know that he does those sprints on Christmas Day with his family, and he can run forever. So I think with the Dockers wing positions being so wide open, he's every chance to spend a little more time on the outside, being one possession away from the stoppage at some points, to allow the likes of a Matt Johnson or a Nat Fyfe to get a bit more minutes in the midfield. And I think that because of his ability to run so well and play on the outside, there could be a chance that he moves to a little more of an outside player. So at 608K, I don't know if I can invest that much on a player where I think his role could be slightly changed. But if he moves to the outside, I still think he can score well. And I certainly see the upside in him, considering he had a slow start too last season. And I can see both sides of the fence in picking him. But I think he's the one that's going to suffer the most from the additions to the Dockers midfield.
Sounds like a couple of red flags there. Dan, what's your take on Andy B, mate? Super player, but what do you think about his prospects this year, mate?
I think he's still a really solid fantasy selection because if he does spend a bit more time on the outside, he'll pick up a few more of those marks, and that's kind of that game. But if he loses few of those contested possessions, it could hurt his SuperCoach game. So, yeah, I'm a bit with Damo there. When there's doubt, and there's so many great midfields to choose from at the moment that with all those guys coming up from the forward line, and there's just so many to choose from. So if you've got a guy with a few doubts on, then I'd rather look at him maybe as an upgrade later in the year, and you just let him slide through to the keeper for now.
Beautiful. And the question there is, if you can only pick one of Andy and the Schlong, who do you pick? I think all of our answers are the same. Caleb Strong at this stage. But never discount the man. Yep. Super player. The next man, we go all the way down to rookie price here, and it's Jeremy Sharp. So obviously made his way across from the Gold Coast Suns. From what I've heard, I've always been a pretty big fan of Sharp, so really happy to be able to bring him across. 21 years of age. Didn't play a single game last year in 2023. Does have 23 career games, though. As we can see by the ownership percentage, a very popular selection. Dan, is he currently in your side, mate?
Yeah, he's riding the pine in my side. We'll see what he can do. He didn't have sort of blow anyone away with his game the other day, but he is a great runner. He'll keep running all day. I think as he starts fitting into the system a bit more and learns where to place himself, he'll start having some good games. I wouldn't quite be confident enough to whack him on field just yet, but I think, yeah, he's a solid enough bench guy. There's a little bit of competition there, but I'm happy to put him on my bench for now, yeah.
Beautiful, Damo. So 10 touches and a goal at around 80% efficiency on the weekends, mate. Did you do anything to scare you off, chuck him in on your bench, or do you think he's just doing what he needs to do to maintain that, say, M10, M11 position, mate?
I think I think the Dockers are a big fan of Jeremy Sharp's running capacity and what he can do with the ball on the outside. So I don't think there's any danger of him not playing. There might be a couple of games where he's asked to go back to Peel and work on something, but Justin Longmuir rewards these players who fix things up pretty quickly. So I think his job security is pretty solid, especially for the first part of the season. And on the bench at M10, M11, perfect, because you're basically getting a best 22, maybe best 23 player for a rookie price. So, yeah, 123K, put him on the bench. What he did against the Power, I thought his second half was a lot better than his first half. I think he didn't get his first possession against the Power until about 20 minutes into the first quarter. And I don't know if that's because he wasn't on the field or just because the ball was going more down the corridor, and maybe he needs to get involved more on the inside and not sit on the outside skirts of the ground so much. But I think 123K, there's not a lot that you can go wrong with. And like Dan said, I wouldn't put him on field.
Beautiful. So, yeah, M10 and 11, nothing wrong with that. Now we're into the rucks, and it's Big Shrek Darcy, 25 years of age, 15 games last year for an average of 105.5. 0.9% of the competition currently own this man. Now, we know that he's had a history of some poor durability, looked really good at times, pre-buy 104, post-buy 111. Now, with the new ruck rule coming in, does this actually favour someone like Shrek? We couldn't get a lot of info from the last game. Just looking back at his stats here, only 40% game time did yield him a score of 52 SuperCoach points, 18 hitouts, and the 4 touches. But Dan, what do you think about Big Shrek Darcy? Is he relevant this year when we've got blokes like English, your Marshalls, your Gawns? Do we take a look at this man, or maybe just push him to the side?
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to pick with all those other guys sort of underpriced and stuff. He's basically kind of around the same price as Gawn, and Gawn is infinitely better selection in my mind. I think the new ruck rules will suit him. I saw him for a bit of that first and the start of the second quarter against Port, and he was just holding Soldo off and doing all these fancy little taps around, and he looked really good. But, yeah, his durability is a big issue. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's kind of underpriced in a way. He can average over 105. I think he's more 110, 112 guy for me, if he can keep his body right. But he tends to just get knocks and stuff all the time and spend time. Like he hasn't, I mean, except for the end of last year, he hasn't had that many really serious injuries, but he just tends to miss too many games for my liking. Love the guy,
your thoughts on the Big Shrek, mate?
I think his injury troubles come down to, and it feels weird to say it's about a 25-year-old. I think it comes down to someone who doesn't really know how to use his own size. He was drafted he was drafted already massive, so he's been pretty much this size for his entire adult life now, and I think he's still learning how to use it because he'll get into situations where that's why he gets injured, and it's kind of like, why were you standing there? Why didn't you move out of the way, kind of thing. Like, it's always knock to the ankle or knock to the knee or something along or something along those lines. His size is his biggest strength, but also his biggest weakness at times. But this preseason, since he joined the main group, it's the fittest I've seen him, and there's not a lot of strapping apart from around that knee where he always has strapping during games. So is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Does he need the strapping for more support? Who knows? I'll trust the strength and conditioning guy at the Dockers. But yeah, I think the price is too similar to Max Gawn to pass up Max Gawn. I think if Sean Darcy was 100K cheaper and he had a poor game that dropped his average way down before he had to sit out the whole season, then maybe we would be talking about him a lot more. But not someone that I would pick, especially when he's so close to other prices of ruckman that are probably more reliable.
Agreed. Absolutely nothing I can add to that. But yeah, I've been an owner in the past, and there's been some really, really fun times and then some down times as well. So yeah, rocky relationship with the big Shrek, but yeah, undeniably a fantastic player. Big boy. The next man, Dogger Jackson. So we are sort of diverging into the forward line here. 22 games last year. 23 games last year, 22 years of age, pushing towards triple figures. Now, we know where these big scores came. It was obviously when Shrek was out of the side. I traded him in when he was number one ruck, and this bloke looked absolutely fantastic. Without Shrek on the side, he is one of the first picked in my team, particularly given the fact that he's got forward status. But given the fact that Shrek is currently healthy and fit and will be playing the majority of time in the ruck, Damo, do you think that Luke Jackson is a viable starting pick, or do we need to rely on, and I hate to say it, a potential Shrek injury for him to be a relevant selection this year, mate?
I think he could, in the end, outperform his starting price, regardless of Darcy. But I think he's not someone we can start with because he will drop in price before going on a run. So there'll come a time where Luke Jackson hits maybe 450K, and suddenly the connection between him and Darcy and the balance is clicking, and that's when you can jump on him, because I think he will eventually outperform his starting price, just not as a starting selection to start the season.
Great point. So one that we can keep absolutely in the back pocket for now. Dan, what are your thoughts on Big Dogger, mate?
Yeah, I completely agree. If he was 450K, I'd consider starting him, like, for sure, because I think over the season he's going to get better and better. And as he starts clicking with that forward line and there's more attention on a miss and other guys down there, he's going to get loose a bit, and I think he'll go well. I also think that he will start taking a little bit more of the ruck time off Darcy. I see it more as a kind of like maybe 60 or 65, 35 split, something like that. So, yeah, I think he can do well. But, like Damo said, wait until he drops in price and pick him up as a bit of a bargain, and then you got some ruck cover, and he's probably going to average enough to be that sort of F6 anyway.
And just before you move on, DR, there are actually training drills and set plays that the Dockers have been practicing where Jackson plays as a midfielder roving to Sean Darcy's taps as well. So he's because of the versatility with him, there could be multiple avenues to how he scores for us.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Because from memory, was it Jackson that had a massive growth spurt pretty late? Was it Jackson that happened to?
That was Tim English.
Oh, Tim English, another WA boy.
Yeah, so in Tim English's draft year, a few years before his draft year, he was actually a big-bodied midfielder, and then grew like 15 centimeters, and then became a ruckman.
That's unreal, isn't it? I was getting the two mixed up. I knew it was one of those WA boys that had that massive growth spurt, but yeah, as I mentioned before, maybe one just to chuck in the back pocket.
I was about to say it didn't happen to me, the growth spurt. Anyway.
Well, we're not all that lucky, are we, mate? But I'll tell you what, when it comes to being lucky and being an absolute athletic beast, it's this man, Nat Fyfe. Now, massive talking point. And I think when people click on to this team preview, this is probably the man that they want to hear about the most. Now, I could be wrong in saying this, but just from previous conversations off air, Dan, I don't think you've been the biggest advocate of the Nat Fyfe selection, but after two, what I would call pretty solid practice games, he is firmly on people's radar. We look at that ownership percentage, almost half of the competition are currently running with this man. Now, he has burnt me badly in the past, as recently as last year. I feel that in some ways I'm a little bit crazy for going back to the well. And then I take a look at some of the numbers. I look at who this man actually is, Nat Fyfe. I look at this new mooted midfield role, and I think from an outsider's perspective anyway, that it looks real. There's just too many positives to this pick, even with the age and the injury history, for me to say no. Dan, are you finally on board the Nat Fyfe pick, or are you
I
staying?
want to hear what Damo's got to say first.
Oh, well, we're going to absolutely handball this one on. Damo, what are you thinking on the big Nat Fyfe, mate?
Just by how I set my team up, he's currently my F1, and it's
Well,
because it's because at 283k, I know it sounds crazy to have someone at that price at F1, but it sounds like they're really going to take care of him this season. And I know that would turn some people off, because really take care of someone sounds like a sub or low game time. And we might get that. But the reality is he only needs to average, 75 to make 150k. And are we selecting Nat Fyfe as a keeper? Gee, it'd be nice. But in the end, at 283k, even if he only does his job as a stepping stone, that's awesome, because Nat Fyfe could have games where he goes 130, and he could have games where he goes 65. And should I mention that I've actually got a response from Justin Longmuir when I was asking about
that's right.
about Nat Fyfe? So
Here we go from the man himself.
So I asked Justin Longmuir, will Fyfe be managed to get him through the season, basically? And the answer I got was, and I'll read out the whole answer. It says, we'll work through that when we get there, trying not to get too far ahead of myself with Fyfe. Our first 3 games are off 6-day break, so he might need one of them lower game time. He's going well, though, and our midfield depth will allow us to do it, which is good. So he's looking at the likes of Brayshaw, O'Meara, Sarong, Young, Johnson, all those sorts of players to pick up the slack in games where they need Fyfe to maybe rest forward a bit more, or have lower game time, or be subbed out. So I think the way that they're going to care for Nat Fyfe makes him a better pick than if they were just going to let him go full tilt again.
That is elite. And from the mouth of Justin Longmuir, I told you this man has some good connections over there in WA. All right, Dan, your turn, mate. Have you been swayed? Let us know, mate. Have you been swayed?
So, like, even when Fyfe was flying and he was averaging, 120s and stuff back in his Brownlow years, I didn't want to pick him, because I knew if he broke down, then I'd be devastated, on not just for SuperCoach, but for the team and for the man himself. And I basically just go into the depths of depression. So, yeah, and I felt a little bit the same way about picking him this year. I've been putting it off. He has just jumped into my side briefly just to see what it looks like. Right at the moment, he's not there, but I've pretty much got everyone else that's his price there. So I've got Harms and James Jordan, and it's either Billings or McKenzie or one of those guys in there as well. And Harley Reid went in and out. He's back. But, yeah, he's not there at the moment. But, look, I've been so vocal about not putting him in. I might even – I know it sounds a bit stupid because it might be a bit of a waste of a trade, but I might just see what he does the first few games, and if he's got a really good break even and he looks like he's definitely fit and flying, then I'll get him in after – before his price change, maybe. I don't know.
Like it, mate. Sticking to your guns for now. There's a chance, though. There is a small opening, but I like the way you are.
I'm not going to say I won't pick him, but at the moment, while all these other guys are still viable options, I'm going to try and avoid him.
All right, mate. All right. Nothing wrong with that at all, mate. But I'm hoping he goes big, because I'm starting him.
I mean, one thing I will say to all your viewers is there will be people who are confident in Nat Fyfe, and there will be people that aren't. only pick him if you're confident, because I don't think he's a keeper. I think he's more of a stepping stone. But there are people picking him thinking that they're getting a cut price premium. There are people thinking there are
he's going to be F1 all season.
There are people picking him think that knowing that he'll only be a stepping stone, and then there's some people just avoiding him. So make sure you have a plan in place for Nat Fyfe if you are picking him, but don't do it if you're not comfortable. That's the only thing that I'll say.
Yeah. Can I say one thing just quickly? If I see Brodie as like the 23rd man or in the squad like that, because I think the way looking at, we had 8 people on the bench and Brodie was the emergency. So if I see Brodie anywhere near the squad, I'm going to presume that he'll be the sub, and they'll be putting Fyfe on ice at some stage for that game, because he can come in and play the exact same role. So that's
very
what
nice,
I would.
mate. Something to look out for. Very, very nice. All right. On to Tommy Emmett. Now, 2.6% of the competition currently own this bloke. I was a little bit surprised. I didn't know a lot about Tom Emmett, and I really still don't, to be quite honest. But just looking at that average from last year from 2 games, 81.5, 15 disposals, 3 tackles. That's fairly impressive for me. 11 disposals in the Pracky match versus West Coast. I believe he was ill in the last Pracky match versus the Port Power. But look, Damo, I'll go to you, mate. What role do you think he plays this year? Will it be something similar to the Schultz role? And do you think he's entrenched, locked into the best 22, mate? What are your thoughts on Tommy Emmett?
I reckon he would have played against Port if he was ready to go and fit and not ill, but I don't know if maybe that's been the kiss of death for him, and maybe he doesn't make the round 1 side now because he missed the Port game, and maybe it was just unfortunate timing for him, because that forward mix is so hard to nail down at the moment. I imagine he'll be around the traps and be in emergencies and be in and out of the team until they work out the best mix for that forward line with no Schultz. But at 182k, it's a lot to invest in a rookie priced player that might not even be best 22 at this stage.
Yeah,
it's a good point. Certainly talented. We know that he can score well. Dan, has he come across your radar at all this preseason, mate?
he was in my first team picker side. Like
wow, okay.
F5 or something. I liked what he had to offer last year, and with it, before I talked to Damo online about it, I just presumed that he was going to sort of click straight into that Schultz role, but seems to be a little bit more complicated than that. I think Bailey Bamfield's bided his time being the sub and stuff, and I think Longmuir might want to sort of reward him a little bit and give him a bit of a shot at that role. He may not, but he seems to be in the mix. There's chances that we might try and go a little bit taller down there and have someone like Patrick Voss and it's hard. I've talked to Damo a little bit just through Twitter and stuff, messaging back and forth, and it's very hard to nail down what our forward line's actually going to look like. Sturdy got a bit of a go and didn't have much of a impact over the weekend. I'm not sure if I see him in our best 22 on current form. He might need to go back to the 2s and do a little bit more down there. And I think Emmett's sort of in that same vein. He might need a sort of 20-touch, 3 or 4 goal performance in the 2s just to push his way in and force his way into the side.
Yeah, well, at 182,200, if we're not quite sure if he's entrenched in that best 22, probably a pass for now. Now, the man that you just alluded to there, Dan, is Patrick Voss. I'm not sure if he's in relation to the great Michael, but 123,900 forward, 20 years of age, 0.8% of the competition currently own him. Now, on the weekend, had a pretty decent game here. So we can see 11 touches for 75 points, kicked a snag as well. What are your thoughts on Patrick Voss? Is he simply forward depth, or do you think he can actually break his way into the best 22 come round 1, mate?
I think if I was making the decisions, I would have him ahead of Sturt. But because even at 195 centimeters, he has the ability to play a little smaller than his height. So he can play that third tall, medium tall sort of role. And it sounds weird because 195, he's actually taller than Josh Tracy. So,
Wow. Okay.
But he doesn't look it when he's playing just because of how
No.
mobile he is, which probably holds him in good stead to get more games than we think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would if I was picking the team, I'd have him ahead of Sturt, maybe even ahead of Emmett or Banfield. But at 123k, it's hard to get a read on it because in match simulations, he hasn't been a part of the best forward setup that they've put together when they've changed the jumpers around at halftime. So hard to get a read on what they see in him, but the fact that he got a role against Port Adelaide and executed it really well, and I think there's every chance that we see him in round one because we know that Justin Longmuir rewards players in form.
I was pretty impressed with him myself, but I often got him mixed up. I thought that Voss was Cooper Simpson at one stage, so I was getting a little bit excited about Simpson, but it was Voss half the time, so my mistake there. Dan, what are your thoughts on Vossy, mate?
Yeah, his body's ready for AFL. He's a solid chap. Yeah, I like him. I think he might be the nephew of Voss. Is that right? Do we know that? Anyway,
I couldn't give you an answer. I've got no idea.
Not sure.
There is some relation there, and yeah, no, I liked his game. I think he's very hungry. He's going to relish that second chance. Often these guys that do get that second chance, if they get a run at it, they'll do everything in their power to sort of hold their spot. I think Freddie's availability might have something to do with when he gets a shot as well. Frederick, I'm not sure, Damo, if you know whether he's fit or whether he's likely to get fit by round one. But
Frederick's not in doubt for round one at the moment, but to be honest, I think they're two different players who can coexist in the same forward line.
Yeah. I'm just saying that's just another, maybe they leave sort of Sturt in for Freddie, and then then there's still a spot for Patrick. That's all. But yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah. Once again, he's just another one of these. There's quite a few forward rookies and ones with probably better JS than Patrick Voss. So, and a pure SuperCoach perspective, I'd say he wouldn't even get a bench spot for me at the moment, although I love the kid and hope he gets a bit of a run at it at Freo.
All righty. Well, boys, we'll finish with the last man on this list who may be in competition with Vossy for a spot on our forward bench, and it's Cooper Simpson, 117,300 mid forward, 19 years of age, drafted with pick 35. Last time I checked, ownership was at 8.6%, was a Stingrays BNF and co-captain in 2023. Terrific power and speed out of the stoppage. Now, had a decent preseason from all reports, but Damo, similar to Voss, do you actually see Cooper Simpson in the best 22 come round one, mate? Look, he was okayish on the weekend. Didn't set the world on fire by any stretch, but what are your thoughts on Cooper, mate? Because I know that I've flirted with him and I've sort of got my fingers crossed hoping that you're going to give us some good news here, mate, because I'm really not sure on him.
He's going to be a great, outside of SuperCoach, he's going to be a great player of long term. I think with a late pick 35, the Dockers have really done really well selecting this guy, especially considering Cal Toomey had him in the top 20 at one point. So the Dockers got a real good pick there, and I think he's going to be a really good player. But as far as round one, I honestly have no idea.
Damn.
Like
Yeah.
the preseason would suggest yes, but how he performed against Port Adelaide would make me think maybe not. Maybe he needs to bulk up a bit. Maybe he needs a bit of a run at Peel first. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him in the round one side, but I don't know what capacity he would be there. So he might get named as the sub.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If he doesn't get named to the sub, with all this sort of talk of Fyfe being in the centre and Jaeger playing forward, and like if he gets a role in the side, he's probably playing as a small forward anyway. So, and coming off the bench and filling holes here and there. So I can't see him as a great scorer, even though he's got a whole heap of talent. Just by that photograph, he looks like a 10-year-old that's stuck a moustache on his head. But
he does, doesn't he? He doesn't look like he's got the biggest frame.
But I think it makes him feel like a grown-up growing that moustache. But I think they're going to make a big hoo-ha about giving him his jumper at home one. So if it's not round, because he's got Pav's jumper and everything, and they love the kid and they think he's good. You know, he said when he came in, he didn't want to leave. He wants to be a one-club player, and he said all the right things if you come from Victoria and you want to play for Freo. So let's hope his name's not Lockie, so he might hang around.
Little Brisbane Lions dig there, mate.
Internally, the club wants to celebrate the 29 returning to the field. So I don't know if a debut would come as the sub. I think they'd prefer to give him a full game when he does play. So that might be what holds him out of the round one team in the end.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point. Something I did not even think about and didn't realise he was wearing the great Pabs number either. But boys, that is it for our review this week. That was absolutely elite. As I said at the start, if you want any of the good juice coming out of Freo, you are the two blokes to talk to. Dan, you've been on, as I said, this is the third time this pre-season, mate. Thank you very, very much for joining us again. Much appreciated. What do you got coming up next couple of weeks, mate? Anything exciting apart from putting this team together?
No, just looking forward to the footy starting, watching all those round zero games. I'll probably watch them all twice just to make sure I didn't miss anything. I'll spend a bit of time this week going back over some of those preseason games. I watched most of them, but, you know, some of them you've sort of distracted and getting on Twitter and mucking around, listening to the commentary, so I probably need to go back over some of them. But, there's a lot of players bobbing their heads up, so it's going to be hard to pick a SuperCoach side. I think there's quite a few different little structures we could go with, whether you go heavy back or really heavy in the midfield. I've seen a lot of teams with sort of all the way down to M6 and just the couple of rookies on field. And then I've seen other, 5 deep in the black line, like with a Yo or whatever at D5. So, there's some pretty different structures going on. It's going to be a very interesting year, I think. I think the only thing we're all pretty much agreed on is having Gawn at F1, and most of us are sticking with Grundy at R1, and most of us are sticking with Grundy at R2. But the rest of the teams are all over the shop. So, it'd be interesting to see how it all works out.
Well, mate, thank you very much for joining us again. I'm sure we'll be talking plenty before the start of round one. And Damo, man, thank you very much again for coming on. Now, as I mentioned at the start, you're a big reason for my channel really getting to 5K. I was actually on a podcast with you and the great man Clarky when some people from the Herald Sun were listening in. One thing led to another. I found myself on the TV. My mug was in the Herald Sun. And I'll never forget this, mate, because it was really all due to coming on your podcast, which was really exciting for me. So thank you very much, my great friend. Really appreciate you coming on. And tell us, mate, what do you got coming up content-wise, and give all your socials and all the rest a bit of a shout-out, mate.
So check out Footy Mailbag, at Footy Mailbag on almost all the social medias. If you can find us on Twitter, we've got a link tree in our bio, so just hit that and you'll find everything you need. And Clarky and I will be doing a watch-along on Twitch for the Brisbane-Carlton game this Friday, where it'll be instead of this week's podcast, just due to the hectic week that we've both got. So jump in, ask us all the questions to get your team ready. We'll be reacting to the game as it happens. Obviously, we can't show the game in the live stream, but we will watch along with you guys at home as you've got on the Kayo or the telly. But go and follow the Footy Mailbag, and hopefully my YouTube channel will have a video on it soon revealing my team before round one.
Very, very exciting, mate. And tell you what, being a Brisbane man myself, I'll just be putting the TV on mute, turning you up, and listening to all the good stuff, mate. Don't worry about Hutto and all these people. I'll be in very, very good company for that. But thanks very much again for joining me, mate. And guys, thank you very much for watching until the end. I'm sure you weren't disappointed hearing all the good goss coming out of Freo. Plenty of relevant players. I'm on Young. I'm on Fyfe. I'm on Sarong. So plenty in my side. Let me know down there in the comments section who you're looking to select this year. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks again, legends. Catch you guys. Bye.